I've shared this before. In the course of my marriage, we've moved quite a bit because of job opportunities or my wife's health or some such. And I think this is just a human thing. We like to look back on our lives and try to see the hand of God in things. We were there so that this happened, etc.
Right.
And of course, all happens according to at least the permissive will of God, and so He does work to the good for those who love Him. But sometimes it's helpful to be like, that was just a stupid idea that we did that. And that's okay. Like, it's okay that we can just acknowledge that we made a stupid move and now we're here. And we don't have to pretend that it was all part of God's plan. My question is the Novus Ordo like that? Like, should we just look back and go, it was clearly a bad idea what we just did to this central unifying liturgy that we just sort of, according to some, sort of just mutilated and infantilized? And instead of pretending this is all part of God's plan, He's leading us through this, would it be more appropriate to go, yeah, this was a terrible idea, and clearly the Latin Mass is more beautiful and inspires more reverence and devotion, and we need to return to that? What do you?
Yeah, I mean, you could say at the very least that, and this is a matter I think about which Catholics who have a serious understanding of the Mass and a serious theology of the Mass can disagree about the details. So you could take the Benedict XVI view that the reform of the Mass was bungled, and that, apparently a lot of people think his aim was anyway in freeing up permission for the old Mass, for the old rite of the Mass. It became the extraordinary form of the Latin rite, and then the Novus Ordo is the ordinary form, right? Was for them to exert a kind of influence on one another, where eventually you would have the extraordinary form would take on elements of the ordinary form, and vice versa, and eventually you'd have what the Fathers of Vatican II actually intended, which would be much more elevated and much more elevated than the celebration of the Novus Ordo often is, and you get rid of the guitars and all that nonsense, but you'd still have some of the reforms that would make it a bit different from the experience that someone hearing the Mass 100 years ago might have. But it would still be clearly continuous with it as well. It wouldn't be some radical break.
Yeah, I've been to a Latin Novus Ordo that's celebrated according to what Sacrosanctum Concilium seems to have indicated or desired. And, I think if I had just showed up at what I thought was a Latin Mass and seen that, I may not have known the difference.
Yeah.
Because I'm not really versed in the Latin Mass. Right. Others would have. But I mean, it was very beautiful and reverent. I thought to myself, golly, I wish this was the way it was. But.
Yeah. Well, so the point I'm trying to make is when you ask, should we look at the Novus Ordo as just a mistake that was made and so on? The response is, well, first of all, it depends on what you mean by it, right? Do you mean the Novus Ordo as it's celebrated by some given parish where you got the guitars and all this excessive informality and all that kind of stuff?
That is
or
what
do
I
you
mean,
mean the Novus Ordo? That I think is certainly a mistake.
Yeah. Okay.
So, but if you mean, what someone like Benedict XVI had in mind by it, that's debatable. Whether you could certainly make a case that some reforms were needed. I don't have a strong opinion on that. I'm more favorable to the what's now called the extraordinary form, but that's an issue that I haven't spoken much on because I don't have as strong opinions on that. So the Benedict XVI position on that, okay, it's certainly a defensible position. But again, if what you mean is, no, I don't mean that, I mean what we actually ended up having.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The clown masses and all that kind of
stuff. Well,
stuff.
see, it's not just the clown masses though, is it? Like, I'm talking like 90%. That's what I'm talking of.
Yeah.
So it's not even the clown masses. It's just most places you show up to when you're on vacation. I'm just like gritting my teeth, like, what do we got here?
Right. It's excessively informal.
And then the priests
doesn't have the
who
dignity.
don't wish it to be informal are afraid that the bishop will slap them on the wrist if they do try to do something like bring the kneelers out and get rid of the guitars.
Yeah. I would say that is a mistake. I mean, that things went that way is, I would say, just objectively bad because it fails to convey the meaning of the Mass. And so in that way, it's surely a mistake. Though it's also possible, because God can work through mistakes, it's possible there are individual souls here and there who were kept in the church by that. And for whatever reason, given whatever's going on psychologically with them, they wouldn't have been able to stay in the church if there were, okay, someone might give that argument that in modern times, there are certain people for whom that, that sort of celebration appeals to them whereas a more dignified, more traditional celebration would not. And maybe God is working through that. Okay, God works through all kinds of messes. So yeah, that may well happen, but that doesn't make them non-messes. And the way the Mass is celebrated is too often a mess.
Hey, thank you so much for watching. Before you go, do us a favor, leave a comment, let us know what you thought of the video, like, and subscribe.